Graham Shepherd. My early interest in aviation evolved naturally into a cadetship with British Airways in 1964. And in 1966 I graduated as a co-pilot on the Vanguard aircraft, which is a 136-seat turboprop airliner. Subsequently I flew the 111 Viscount and the Boeing family, ending up with the Airbus A320.
When did you become a captain?
I was promoted in 1979 to captain of the Viscount. After a year I was captain on the Boeing 737 and then flew the entire British Airways Boeing family at that time, and retired in 1994 and flew a contract with Alitalia, flying the 767 as the Boeing 767. Following that I flew with ASL Cathay Pacific out of Hong Kong.
And you're now retired?
Yes, I have 14,000 hours. I'm fully retired, but I retain a keen interest in aviation matters, not least the manifestation of unidentified craft that seem to be under intelligent and purposeful control.
Would you tell us more about that?
In 1967 I had 2 radar-confirmed sightings of UFOs. The first, in early 1967, was over the Bay of Biscay, military radar confirmation of 2 highly manoeuvrable, high-accelerating craft which put on a display for us for about 10 minutes, representing a technology far beyond anything we'd ever experienced or could have imagined. The second was a radar conflict alert over Manchester. We saw a disc-shaped craft illuminated by the sun doing something in the order of 1,000 miles an hour, came very close to us, about a quarter of a mile away. We had a very fine view of what must represent very, very advanced technology by a species unknown that's operating freely in the environment of our planet.
Many other qualified people share these views.
Yes, there are a number of highly qualified professionals who have similar views to my own, not least Mr. Roy Dutton, who is a retired British aerospace research engineer, who's done and developed the astronautical theory for the delivery and retrieval of off-planet craft into the Earth environment. Now this theory, which has met a certain amount of establishment resistance, demands some focus and attention and quite a lot of work to understand. If it is an absolutely vital component in unravelling what is emerging as one of the most important questions ever to face mankind. At first sight, an unrelated mystery, the crop circles, seems to be, through Mr. Dutton's work, to be a related enigma.
Why do you think that?
Well, for some reason, of course we don't know at the moment, UFO activity, the intensity of UFO activity and the complexity of crop circle appearances seem to be related, and the link is considered in great detail in this series of videos. And I would urge anyone with the slightest interest in this subject to view and see the interviews and graphic representations, illustrations, which quite clearly show that this should be brought to the attention of the greatest number of interested people.
Over 30 years of unsponsored scientific work is being offered as a unique trilogy of videos, from which the following clips have been extracted. The study began during 1967 with investigation of strange aerial craft reports from local people, and eventually became global in scope. All manner of possibly related phenomena were also considered. Even the layers of crop circles were mathematically analysed. What has become known as my astronautical theory for UFO close encounters was derived from global evidence taken from a long period of time, the earliest events considered having been reported during the 19th century. The results of my prolonged, now 32 years study have been quite astounding, even to me. The studies began with events reported from the areas shown by these maps. Throughout the subsequent studies, every kind of close encounter was investigated, including those encounters involving witness amnesia and possible abduction, just 2 examples being depicted here. The local study evolved into a synthesis of worldwide events, and thereafter into the definition of an advanced and programmed astronautical activity. The resulting astronautical theory indicated that timings of visitations to any targeted area could be predicted quite accurately. The possible times of visitation could be represented in optional graphical form, as for the example case shown here. On this graph, the lines represent the predictions, and the superimposed points mark the dates and times of recorded events in that area. As usual, and as demonstrated elsewhere in the videos, the globally predicted lines seem to be confirmed by the times of the new local events.
It's always an honour to treat somebody kindly and put them into a crop circle for the first time and see the amazement on their faces, especially Oriental people. When they walk into a crop circle, it's sheer joy to see the realization that, hello, something's really happened here. Even this week, I've had people that's come from America on a bus tour thinking that crop circles were just a joke. But after seeing them and going into 1 or 2, they realize there's a bit more to it than they thought. And I'm afraid this is what happened to you. You sort of thought, I don't know, I'm going to take a keen interest in this, and that's what you've been working on ever since.
First, I'd like to say that what we were doing here is, we had heard, of course, the crop circles, and our assessment was that from various reports there was an aerial phenomenon component to it, some type of what we considered probable extraterrestrial activity. And so we had a team come here in 92, 93, 94, and again this year in 1995 to do research in the area, but particularly geared towards moving beyond just a sky watch, but trying to actually make contact with whoever were making these crop circles in some sort of a context of interspecies communications and relations. So we had a team set up in the farm there below Woodborough Hill, and had been out several nights prior to the night that you mentioned on July 26th. It was actually significant that 2 nights prior to that, on the 24th, just after sunset, with the sky still having a very crystal clear blue quality to it, between 10 and 10:30, a disc-shaped craft catapulted through the zenith of the sky, covering about, I would say, somewhere around 30 degrees of arc, and was quite low, actually, and quite clear, because the air was crystal clear. And you could see the lights going around it counterclockwise in this very unusual pattern. It started raining because we were in a field and the cars were on this dirt track that would become very difficult to pass. Most people left. There were 4 people who, however, remained behind. I was one of them, and then 3 other members of the team. We went to a paved road on the farm that we were working on there in Alton Barnes, and we're waiting out this rain, which was really quite torrential at times. And at about 12:20 a.m. on the 27th, the wee hours, of course, this is the same night of the 26th, just past midnight, there was a extraordinary event that then began. We had a member of the team who was in a car behind mine come running around, beating on the windows, and I opened it, and he said, "There's a spaceship coming through the field." And I said, "Well, that's very..." I thought he was joking, of course, and I turned, and not far above the field, perhaps 10 feet, was a approximately 100 to 150 foot diameter disc with lights going around counterclockwise, with a sort of a cone or dome on top, with 3 lights on the top of it, 3 or 4 amber lights. Now, the lights that were going around counterclockwise were identical, and the shape of this craft was identical to the object that came straight overhead on the 24th at about between 10 and 10:30.
Talking to Malcolm Smith, who's a pilot of a Jodel aircraft, and I ended up speaking to Malcolm and his co-pilot because a family were coming along the motorway, the M56, towards Stockport from holiday on the evening of Sunday, 1st of June, 1997, and saw this massive triangle, and our local paper, the Stockport Express, put a little item out with the Seal family's agreement, looking for other witnesses. And to our delight, Malcolm rang me up because his sister lives in the Stockport area, bought the paper, and remembered Malcolm telling her about this triangle they saw that undertook their aircraft on the same day, beautiful sunny morning, not like today, of the 1st of June. So perhaps Malcolm would like to explain what himself and Martin saw when they were flying to Wales.
We were cruising at about 1,500 feet, 90 knots approximately, when Martin, who was in the co-pilot seat on the right-hand side, suddenly drew my attention to a very large triangular-shaped shadow that was overtaking our starboard wing.
This morning we've come to the Torbay Holiday Motel on the outskirts of Paignton, the seaside town in Devon, where a remarkable event occurred last year, 1998, and we've come here to interview the witness of that event.
I took my dog and brought her up here for an evening stroll, and we got here to the fence, and the dog turned round and virtually pointed like a pointer at something in the field, and I couldn't see anything, but from the dog's attitude, it was obviously that she was very confused. And as I looked where she was looking, an object materialized over a space of, I say, about 3 seconds, and it was most extraordinary. It started off like a hologram and turned into what to me was a very solid object. About 40 feet away, the object materialized over a period of about 3 seconds. It turned out to be a rectangular block about 10 feet long, about 4 feet wide and 3 feet deep. When it first materialized, I don't know whether it was hovering above the ground or settled on the ground, but at the back there were two holes, 2 large holes, and these were giving out a slow pulsing orangey yellow light. The light quickened up, and the object actually rose to a height of about 2 feet above the ground, and as I watched it, the tempo of the pulsating continued, and it seemed as though something was going to happen.
Harry, almost 20 years have passed since you began the process of hypnotizing people who had had amnesic close encounters. I wonder what gave you the idea in the first place?
Well, many years before my interest in UFOs, a dentist friend of ours rang us up. He just learned to do hypnosis, and he wanted to experiment on us. He came round to our home, hypnotized Susan, my wife, and regressed her back to a child at school, and she retrieved memories of her schoolroom that she'd consciously forgotten. This, at the time, impressed me, and when subsequently I met Alan Godfrey, the first abductee amnesiac who'd had a UFO experience, who couldn't remember quite a large chunk of it, I decided to try hypnosis
to try and retrieve and unscramble his missing and confused memories. And it took off from there. But my interest in the subject of hypnosis was activated long before I had any interest in UFOs.
So, after you'd explored one of these events, you felt it was sufficiently mysterious to prompt you to want to do the same thing to help others who had had similar experiences.
Yes, what I couldn't understand, what intrigued me about this phenomenon, was not just that somebody had seen a UFO, but they had lost their memory. And when one got cases of 2 or 3 people together who'd lost their memory, had a period of amnesia as part of the UFO sighting, this intrigued me. And whenever I came across such cases, where the witnesses agreed, arranged hypnotic regression experiments to be carried out, and I filmed them all on my video camera. So they are there as a piece of history, a piece of posterity, as to what these people were saying. And what struck me was that the commonality and similarity of accounts amongst all the witnesses that I've had hypnotized over the years, there are certainly the similarities outweigh the differences. And unless one is going to allege that all these good people conspired together behind my back to tell a yarn, one has to accept that there must be a basis of truth to what they're saying.
Can you tell us any more about any information that you were given, anything that you were told?
We're not the only ones that this has happened to.
You're not?
No. It's happened to many people.
What is the purpose of this?
It was overcast, no sunshine, sort of a dull-ish sort of day, and suddenly, in front of me was a tube running up about 1,000 feet. Oh, well, I'm not a good judge, but I would say 1,000 feet plus, or coming down out of sight onto the ground. This was not very many yards away from me, but the important point about it that struck me with it was the circular motion of the ashes in the grit on the ground. It didn't appear to be being sucked up the tube. It was just rotating at high speed on the ground, about 2 feet wide, 2 feet 6 perhaps on the ground. And the tube was vertical and perpendicular, and it didn't grow at the top or anything. And that was unusual. That was one of the unusual things about it. It's this field here. It was in winter barley at the time. It's a cornfield most of the time. And looking across, diagonally, looking at the wood behind, it was to the left, about halfway along the wood line that you can probably see on the film. The first one, where I stood in the field nearby. And then, when that died away, the second one appeared nearer the tree, near the woods, in the far distance, just in the field there. And the same thing happened there. But it was uncanny. I've worked these fields for 50 years, and I've never seen anything like it before, nothing at all like it.
How do you feel, first of all, about the analysis that I did, whether in fact it does seem to indicate what I believe it indicates, and how do you feel this is developing, the whole phenomenon?
Well, you certainly were the first, I think, to look at the lay of the plants in a mathematical manner, a scientific manner. We, as you know, spoke many times of the angle of the plants and that the swirl symmetry was so impressive. Your work was certainly the first to, I think, as near confirm as we've been able to get, that the swirl itself is not a natural vortex. So, I mean, it's been an important segment of information. It has moved on, as you know. We have now had many patterns that have been counter-rotated, and I know you have continued to look at that too. The whole thing has moved on. The patterns have obviously become more complex, larger. The geographic distribution continues to infill around the whole world.
Now, to conclude, in this trilogy of videos, I believe we have presented tangible scientific evidence that whatever turns out to be the ultimate nature of the so-called UFO phenomenon, we are definitely not alone in this part of the vast universe. By means of this video trilogy and in other ways, it is hoped to provoke a full-scale scientific investigation of the work supporting that proclamation.